Hey, can I ask you something honest? When Friday rolls around and your phone buzzes with a party invitation, what's your first feeling? For a lot of people, it's not excitement. It's more like a quiet sinking, a gentle oh no, and so you find a polite excuse. You stay home. You make something warm to drink, curl up in your favorite spot, and feel something you didn't expect to feel. Relief, genuine, peaceful relief. But then, almost immediately, the second guessing starts. What's wrong with me? Why can't I just enjoy being around people like everyone else seems to? Here's what I want you to hear before we go any further. Nothing is wrong with you. In fact, what you're experiencing has been studied, documented, and explained by decades of psychology and neuroscience research. So let's talk about it. Really talk about it. Psychologists have been studying this question for over 100 years, and the more they look, the clearer the picture becomes. Preferring solitude is not a flaw. It's not a sign that something went wrong in your development. It's not loneliness dressed up in a different outfit. It is a genuine psychological and biological trait, one that a meaningful portion of people around the world share with you. Everything we explore today is rooted in real research, real studies, real human brains scanned and measured and understood a little better than before. By the time we finish, I hope you'll feel less like something needs fixing and more like you finally understand yourself a little more clearly. Let's start with something that was written over a century ago and still holds up beautifully. In 1921, Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung published a book called Psychological Types. In it, he described two natural orientations in human personality: extroversion and introversion. Extroverts turn outward. They light up in social settings. They feel more alive when surrounded by people and noise and stimulation. Introverts turn inward. They find their richest experiences in thought, reflection, and quiet. And here's something really worth sitting with. Introversion is not shyness. Shyness is about fear. Fear of being judged, of saying the wrong thing, of how others see you. Introversion is something different entirely. An introvert can walk into a room and be completely at ease talking with people. They can be funny, warm, deeply connected. But at the end of the night, they come home feeling like they ran a marathon. Social interaction costs them energy in a way it simply doesn't for extroverts. Jung wasn't pointing to a problem. He was pointing to a natural, human difference. So why does being around people drain some of us so much faster? The answer, it turns out, is biological. In 1967, psychologist Hans Eysenck published The Biological Basis of Personality, and what he found is genuinely fascinating. Introverts, he discovered, have a higher baseline level of cortical arousal. In plain language, their brains are already running at a higher hum, even at rest. Because of that, they need far less stimulation from the outside world to feel comfortable. Extroverts are the opposite. Their baseline is quieter, so they naturally seek out more noise, more people, more input to feel fully alive. Think of it like a personal volume dial. An extrovert starts at low volume. A busy, buzzing room turns it up to just the right level. But if you're an introvert, your dial already starts higher. That same room pushes everything past the comfortable range. It becomes too much. Not because you're fragile, but because you were already full. Solitude, for someone like you, isn't avoiding life. It's letting your nervous system breathe again. There's one more piece of this that I find really beautiful, honestly. It has to do with dopamine, the brain chemical most associated with pleasure and reward. In 2010, Neuroscientist Colin DeYoung published research on personality and brain structure. He found that extroverts tend to be more sensitive to dopamine. Social moments, being praised, laughing in a crowd, feeling seen in a group, those things trigger a strong dopamine rush in extroverts. They genuinely feel great. Introverts are wired differently. They're less dependent on that social dopamine hit. Their sense of reward comes from quieter places, a deep conversation, a creative project, sitting with a good book and feeling completely absorbed. So when you and a more extroverted friend leave the same party, and they feel energized while you feel hollowed out, that's not a character difference. That's two different brains processing the same experience in completely different ways. Neither is better. They're just different, and both are real. I want to pause here for a moment, because this part really matters. Preferring solitude doesn't automatically mean you're introverted, and not all withdrawal comes from the same place. The American Psychological Association and the DSM-5 make some really important distinctions here, ones that are worth understanding gently but clearly. Introversion is a preference. You choose solitude because it genuinely restores you. You're not afraid of people. You just recharge differently. Social anxiety is something else. When someone avoids social situations because they're afraid of being judged, embarrassed, or rejected, that fear is doing the driving, not preference. Depression can also look like withdrawal from the outside. But underneath, the person has often lost interest not just in social things, but in the quiet things they used to love too. These are three very different experiences, and they deserve three very different kinds of compassion and care. Knowing which one resonates for you isn't about labeling yourself. It's about understanding what you actually need. Let's talk about something that doesn't get said enough. Solitude is genuinely good for you, not just tolerable, actually meaningfully good. In 1990, psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi introduced the world to a concept he called flow. Flow is that state where you are so deeply absorbed in something that time disappears. You're not trying. You're not distracted. You're just completely, fully there. People who experience flow regularly tend to be more creative, more productive, and more satisfied with their lives in a deep, lasting way. And here's the thing. Flow almost always happens in solitude. Not because you need to be alone to be productive, but because deep focus requires space, quiet, freedom from the emotional load of other people's needs. For those of you who have always done your best thinking alone, your most meaningful work alone, your most honest feeling alone, that is not a limitation. That is a gift. One that the world quietly needs, even if it doesn't always say so. This is something I really want you to carry with you. Being alone and feeling lonely are not the same thing. They are genuinely, fundamentally different. Researcher John Cacioppo spent decades studying loneliness, and in his 2008 book, he made something clear that changed how many people think about this. Solitude is a physical state. You are by yourself, and it can be neutral, peaceful, even deeply fulfilling. Loneliness is an emotional state. It's the ache of feeling disconnected from others, of wanting to be seen and not being able to reach that. And here's the part that I think is most important. Loneliness has nothing to do with how many people are in the room. You can be surrounded by 100 people at a party and feel like no one truly sees you. You can be sitting alone on a quiet evening and feel completely held, completely whole. The difference is your sense of connection, not your physical location. Choosing to be alone when it comes from a place of peace and self-understanding is not loneliness. It is knowing yourself, Everything we've talked about so far describes a healthy, natural relationship with solitude. But I'd be doing you a disservice if I didn't mention this gently. There are times when pulling away becomes less about recharging and more about something that needs a little more attention. If you find yourself avoiding social situations because you're genuinely afraid of what people will think of you, that's worth exploring with someone you trust. If you want connection, but feel like a wall goes up every time you try to reach for it, that's worth exploring too. If your withdrawal is quietly affecting your work, your relationships, or the things that used to matter to you, please don't just push through alone. None of this means anything is deeply wrong, but it might mean you deserve more support than you're currently giving yourself. Recognizing the difference between personality and pain is an act of self-kindness, and you deserve that kindness. Here's what all of this really comes down to. If you prefer being alone, your brain is doing exactly what it was built to do. Your nervous system runs at a higher baseline, so you need less input and more space. Your dopamine system rewards depth over volume, stillness over noise. Your personality, shaped by both biology and experience, finds richness in places the louder world sometimes overlooks. That is not a flaw in your design. It is your design. You don't have to perform extroversion to be worthy of connection. You don't have to fill every room to matter in it. You don't have to apologize for coming home early or staying in or needing a quiet Sunday to feel like yourself again. Understanding how your mind works isn't a consolation prize. It's the beginning of something a lot gentler than what most of us were taught about ourselves. If something in this video made you feel a little more understood, I'm really glad. You're not alone in this, even when being alone is exactly what you need. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Are you someone who recharges in solitude? Has this always felt natural to you? Or did it take time to stop feeling guilty about it? If this resonated, a like helps more people who might need to hear this find their way here. And if you want to keep exploring the quieter, often unspoken side of how the mind works, subscribe. We'll be here every week, talking about the things that don't always have words yet. Next time, we're going to look at the psychology of overthinking. Why some minds can't seem to stop running, even when everything is fine, and what that restlessness is actually trying to tell you. Take care of yourself. I'll see you there.